What's up guys, welcome back to the shop. So next couple episodes we're going to be building a go-kart because apparently everybody in my family now is into go-karts and we have to have a go-kart in order to go out and play with them. They've went as far as building a dirt track, so we're going to get some video of going out there and beating up these go-karts. This is what we got so far. We have an old car race seat right there, a little plastic, probably Summit Special from back in the day. Couple tires. We got a Predator 212 with a torque converter variator guy on it. I think I've got a basic layout of what I'm going to do. I kind of have a real rough plan that I found online that I'm going to modify to make it a little easier for me to work with. This is just kind of giving me a rough size of everything and kind of how everything needs to lay out, but it's going to be modified slightly because I don't think I'm going to be able to make as tight a radiuses with the stuff I'm using. I'm going to do each side in two pieces rather than doing it in one long piece, and we'll have a seam back here somewhere in the middle area here. But we're going to go over to the tubing bender and start laying out a piece of black iron pipe because we're doing this on a budget and I can get black iron pipe at Menards for dirt cheap. So it's going to be a little heavier than it should be, but for what we're doing, it'll be just fine. So let's get to it. All right, over here at the, it's actually a pipe bender from Harbor Freight. Not the best thing for the job, but it's what we have. And this is 3/4 black iron pipe. So a couple tricks that I have learned to using this pipe bender and getting better results. To do tighter radiuses, you can use these springs that slide in here. And that'll keep it from crushing, but it still does deform a little bit, and then these springs are a pain in the butt to get out. So one of the tricks I've learned is you want to mark the center of your pipe, or at least draw a straight line all the way down your pipe. That way you have a frame of reference. You know, when we're bending this, we don't want to be bending this bend this way and then this bend kind of up this way because we're eyeballing it. So the easiest way I found to do that is to just lay this out on the bench, making sure the bench is flat and doesn't have a big bow in it, and then simply taking your marker and sliding it down the side all the way down the thing. You can shim it up if you want, but sliding it down the side of it, it gives you a nice flat line. On this black iron pipe, Sharpie's kind of hard to see. You can use, this is a pen used to mark metal. You could also do it similar to this, where you just hold your finger in the same location and just don't change the rotation. And that will give you a mark. This should be straight enough. You could use a paint pen. I don't know if this is going to be dried out or not. I haven't used this thing in forever. Well, I guess it kind of does work. You just want to make sure you get it straight and keep it consistent. So that's why setting it down on the table and shimming it up just perfectly to where it needs to be is probably the best answer. Either way, let's get this marked. Okay, so now that we got our center line drawn all the way down the pipe with the blue paint, it's easier to see on camera. I probably won't do it on the next one because it takes forever to dry. We're gonna come in here and we're gonna mark the pipe every single inch, and we're gonna do the same number of bends on each one of these inch marks from the straight up reference on the die. So we'll start here at 12. I know I'm going to go about 5 inches each way, so we'll probably start on 7 and we'll do probably 8 pumps, and we'll loosen it and do 8 pumps on 8 pumps, 8 pumps, 8 pumps, 8 pumps, all the way down to 17, and then we'll see how close we are to our 90 degrees, and if we need to go a little bit more, we'll come back and we'll add a couple more pumps to each one of these. So let's get this in the bender and see if we can bend her up. Okay, so we got the pipe in the pipe bender, and as you can see, our 7 right there is centered in the die, so we're going to go ahead and jack that up and probably give it about 8 pumps. And then we'll lower it down and we'll slide the pipe into 8 and do the same. All right, guys, we got a basic template laid out on the bench here. So we got our first 90 set up here. Got a hard line here. This is going to be our axle center line. Moving forward, this will be our seat area, but we want to kind of put our center of our diag right here, and so we're going to start bending here, and we probably want to put about a 22.5 degree angle on this and set this in about 4 inches. So that's our goal here. I don't know how that's going to work with the bender we have, the pipe bender, so we're going to give it a whirl. We'll see what happens. Hopefully I don't have to ruin this piece of metal. Worst case scenario, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to elongate this, and our other bend will be a little bit farther forward. So that's the current prognosis, I guess. So let's get this thing in the bender and see what happens. This actually bent better than I thought it was going to. I'm able to put tighter radiuses than I thought I would without it kinking. I guess it's pretty heavy metal, so it's actually working out pretty well. And so here's the mainline runner. All right, fast forward 3.5 hours later or so, roughly. Got all the tubing bent. The GoPro died, which is pretty common with these GoPros, I guess. They always die every time we try to do something. But got it all bent up and laid out. I bent a little piece over here to go around for the motor to support that and kind of protect that, so if somebody runs into it, they don't hit the motor. We're going to go ahead and tack this thing together, and I think I'm going to try to TIG it because I should really get better at TIG welding, so that's what we're going to do right now. This is my last piece of pipe that's going to be just close enough. There are going to be a couple threads on the end, which kind of sucks, but it is what it is. And we're going to make the, I guess it'd be the rear seat support. So we got the tubing or pipe or whatever we're using notcher out, and we're going to go ahead and cut this thing to length, and we're going to notch it. All right, so my piece needs to be roughly 26 3/4 inches long, and then the inside to inside of the notch is 25 3/4. Now this piece is this is 27 inches, so we're not going to worry about cutting it. We're just going to throw it in the notcher. We'll probably take a little bit less off of this side and try to get it so that we don't have a bunch of threads where we go to weld it. One thing too, especially with the notcher, we should do right now before we do anything, is we want to make a center line reference so we make sure our notches are even. So let's go ahead and draw a straight line down this. Can't see any of that. Let's try putting a little bit of pencil out here. Alright, straight line right down the middle of the pipe. We're going to put that straight up. We're going to put this thing into our Speedway notcher here. This thing's a pretty slick little piece. Get it clamped in there nice and straight. Get her tightened down. I broke the vise last night. This clamping, the screws broke off of it, so it's sitting at a slight angle, but that's not going to hurt anything. Don't forget to wear your safety goggles. And let's frickin' notch some tubing. Just that simple. Alright, so we know that this inside diameter, or the inside of this part right here, 25 3/4 of an inch over is where we want to be for our next notch. So let's 25 3/4 is right there. It's right at the edge of the threads. All right, let's remark that. There we go. So that's our new mark. That's the right mark. We'll go ahead and get this chucked in here. Again, we want to pay close attention to make sure that we have this reference line straight up and down so that it will be straight and not twist or not look weird. So there we go. That should be our rear seat brace bar. And we'll go ahead and just clean this up a little bit with the grinder. Deburr it, knock some of the boogers off of it. We got this really cool flap disc, I guess it would be, but it's double-sided and it's got a nice beveled edge on that, which works really good for cleaning up these notches. Let's take it to the cart. That's the way we take it to the cart. Anyways, there's our notch. It's a pretty clean notch on this side. I like it. This side's a little rougher because of those threads on there, and it was tapering down as it went. So, but we'll be able to, when we weld this, we'll fill that in. So it should look fine. Let's go to the cart. There we go, there's our bar. It's definitely a little bit twisted. That's why it's a little tight in here. I didn't quite get that perfectly lined up with the line, so this notch is rolled back just a little bit, and that's why it's a little tighter than it should be. So we can go back and to the grinder, and we can open up this side and then this top here, and that would help make it a little easier to go in. Alright, we've corrected that notch just a little bit. Nice and tight. There we go. Now we'll go and buff off all the paint on these buff off all the paint on this pipe and clean this up so we can weld it. Go ahead and buff the paint off of the frame. All right, 17 1/4 off the back frame. Now that is where she's gonna sit. We'll go ahead and burn it in. All right guys, a little update on the Go Kart. I got my steering column and steering all fabbed up last night. Made some tie rods out of just a 3/8 piece of stock. Went and got a Heim joint at the hardware store and just tapped the 3/8 rod to fit the, I think it was 3/8 24 fine thread. And as soon as I get the spindles tomorrow, we'll go ahead and determine what length these need to be when the spindles are welded on. Just made a little bar right here and drilled a hole every inch so we can have a little bit of adjustment in the steering if it's a little too tight or a little too loose. Got the seat mounted, got the ghost pulled off of the other go-kart, and we're gonna put a big ol' 620 on the two-seater. Got the steering wheel today and the pedals and cable assembly for that, so I think that's what we're gonna work on, is getting the steering column buttoned up tonight. For the steering column, I just took a piece of 3/4 inch tubing I got from the hardware store and a 1-inch tube, and it wasn't quite a tight enough fit, so I found these brass bushings at the hardware store and then had to hollow them out a little bit. Same thing with these collars with the socket and some sandpaper on it. So now everything fits in there. It's a nice tight fit, so it's not going to be real loose and wobbly. And for the hub, what I'm going to do is I went to the hardware store. There's a steering wheel that showed up today from Amazon. It's an Amazon special. To mount the wheel, I got a 5/8 bolt that we're gonna go ahead and just cut the head off. We're gonna slide it down in there, however far down it needs to go. And then we'll drill a couple holes in here. We'll do some rosette welds or plug welds in there. And we'll tighten this at whatever height, maybe like that or whatever. And then this giant washer fits perfectly. It's just a tad bit of play, but fits perfectly around this nut. So we'll weld this washer around this nut. And that washer is just wide enough to catch those 3 holes in there. So I'll drill those 3 holes out. We'll put a couple of these 1/4-20 bolts through there. And then we will put a lock washer and another nut on the steering wheel when it's all said and done, just to clamp it down good so it's not wobbling a bunch. And then those holes will keep it so that it doesn't spin on the steering wheel, so it'll turn. Oh shit, big changes. We got the front end on, oh yeah. So we had to go ahead and make some brackets out of some 10-gauge steel because this is gonna be, the spindle was up higher than our frame rail. So that gave us our ride height we wanted. And then we just ran some kickbacks back to the steering. It's all just tacked in for now. And then I also welded this piece of 16 gauge on the bottom, so you kind of have a footrest here and got the brake pedal dialed in, and I'm getting ready to go ahead and drill and do the gas pedal. This thing's gonna be ripping and roaring in a day or so. All right guys, it's rear axle time. So we're gonna start off by getting these plates and the bearings all bolted together so that it's how it's gonna be when it's on the car. And then we'll determine, based on the wheel height, if they need to go on top or if they need to go on the bottom. But I can almost guarantee they're gonna go on top.
Alright guys, that's going to be a basic overview of the go-kart we just built. It took us roughly 7 days to build. I started on Friday night, screwed up the main frame rails, but I learned a lot in the bending process. Started over fresh on Saturday, got everything bent up, and we had this thing on the track Friday night. This thing is a ripper for sure. I love it. It's a blast. The slicks up front definitely were a no-go on the dirt track. We just kept pushing through the corners. Got roughly about $1,000 into this build. The Predator motor is getting pretty tired, so we're gonna go ahead and upgrade that. We're gonna adjust some of the gearing. This thing's able to keep up with professionally built karts in the straightaways. It has a little bit of trouble in the corner, so my goal for next season is to get this thing to turn and keep up with those cage karts and or possibly beat them. So don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment down below if you got any questions, and hit up FTP Speed Shop.com, pick yourself up some merch, and help support the channel. Later.